Welcome, everyone. It's good to see some. There's not everyone has their video on, but that's all right. I see names, so that's great. Welcome to our second virtual meeting. It seems well enjoyed, and we were just speaking earlier to say let's at least plan for a May one as well. So once the details are together, we'll let you know what we have in store for you. I'm guessing many of you received a newsletter today. If you're a member and have paid your dues, then you're on the mailing list for the newsletter. And Jacqueline does an amazing job, and it's really nice to be able to put that out once a month. I may be contacting some of you because we could use some articles. So I'm hoping that I can twist some arms to have people write some articles for us. So what's new since a month ago? Not a lot. A lot of things have stopped, as you all know. But Saturday, this past Saturday, there was a really good turnout at our district AGM. Our society, Russell Horticulture Society, is part of a District 1 of the Ontario Horticultural Association. There's 7 societies. And so we had an AGM, a virtual one, and really good attendance. I think 130 people had registered. And one of the amazing things that you learn and that come out of that is the amount of volunteering that's done through these societies. We keep track, and last year, even though it was a COVID year, over 8,000 hours were volunteered by members of the different societies. Winter sowing, did some of you try that? Yes. So I was emailing Leah. I'll have to ask her because my peas are about yay tall in the container, and the spinach is yay tall. So it's working well, and I'm wondering how long they have to stay in the container, but I'm sure we'll find out. And it's been a success so far. What else? The project, I think we mentioned it. We received a grant from the OHA for trees or shrubs. And Marilyn and I are working with the Russell Museum, hoping to put a tree there, maybe a seating area. Because of the close restrictions, we haven't met with the museum people, but that'll be on the agenda for whenever. I think that's all I had to say. You're probably wondering about the rain barrel progress and sale, and Manya is going to fill us in on the details for that.
Okay, thank you, Grace. So we've sold 72 barrels to date. So I was quite impressed with that. And the original, so the deadline was going to be April 22nd, but unfortunately with COVID restrictions, we've decided to postpone the pickup date. It was supposed to be May 1st, but we're going to change it to May 22nd, which is basically right after the lockdown is over, and it's the May long weekend. So hopefully people won't be to put out that the rain barrel isn't going to be available until the May long weekend. And Yeah, we just felt that it was kind of odd to be holding a fundraiser and pickup during such a strict lockdown. So, but what I'm asking everybody here tonight, what you can do is I'll be sending Jacqueline and the information, all the changed dates and so forth. If everybody can try to get that out on their Facebook page. So if you see our posting, if you can share it with your friends, then more and more people will see that we still have the sale on, and that the date changes. And also the city is going to give us, the city of Ottawa is volunteering some prizes. So anybody that's bought a rain barrel will be put into a, a draw for some rain barrel parts, some tricked out parts. So yeah, so that's the update for the rain barrels.
Manya,
Yes.
since the pickup is the 22nd, does that mean that the purchases can be done later too?
Yes. So
So
we
what's the actual date for the cutoff for the purchase? Do
yeah,
you
so
know?
we'll extend it to May 14th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I'll send that all out tomorrow.
Okay,
You'll yeah, stay tuned. Let's put it that way.
thank
Manya, would you also give us a little bit of an update on a plug for your tulip farm? How
Yeah.
things are going there?
Sure. I don't want to take away too much from Jennifer's time because I can talk about tulips all day, but
But just make it
yeah,
small, okay?
yeah. So I'm not sure if all of you know. Yeah, so I am a partner in Green Corners You Pick Tulip Farm, and we planted 300,000 tulips. And yeah, so we will be opening. I always tell people follow us on Facebook or Instagram because, as you know, Mother Nature has thrown us a big curveball this year. And last year we opened May 21st, and this year we're probably going to be opening the first week in May. So that's a big jump for us. And yeah, so you'll be able to pick your own tulips. We're considered a agriculture, so we're allowed to be open, but we will be limiting access to the field to 30 adults per hour, and sold by pre-timed tickets. So yeah, so I just encourage everyone to come out and get some great photos, and you can safely distance, because according to the city, we're allowed to have 1,000 people per hour based on our size, but we will be limiting it to 30 adults.
Awesome. Thanks, Manya. And that's in Edwards. I mean,
That's in
when
Edwards, yeah.
people look on Facebook, they'll see that. But
Yeah, so we're just located south of Rochon's
right.
and north of Stanley's.
Could you give the name of your place again?
Yeah, so it's Green Corners You Pick Tulip Farm, and the website is greencorners.ca.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Otherwise, thank you, Manya. And Marie-Claire, I'll leave it to you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Grace. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, and thank you, Jacqueline, for setting this all up. You're amazing. It's my pleasure to introduce to you this evening guest speaker, Jennifer Glenn. Jennifer's passion for gardening and all things growing has been shaping properties in Ottawa and in the area since 2014. During this time, her ability to develop strong customer relations and new visions for older spaces has grown, pick, plant, and prune into a premier garden company. She provides her customers with an in-depth knowledge of garden designs and plant selection, and now specializes in the restoration of older garden estates, pardon me. Jennifer graduated from the University of Waterloo with a biology degree in 2006. Shortly after, she discovered her love for gardening and dedicated her time to growing her knowledge of design and the challenges of planting in Ontario. Her work spans from the smaller downtown properties where space is used sparingly to sprawling estate gardens in the Rockcliffe Park and Manitic area. Jennifer will also talk to us about her new project. She will be starting a new community garden project in Russell Township this year. With these gardens, once established, she will be able to grow over 5,000 pounds of food each year for the Embrum, Castleman food banks, and the local families who are in need. We like to present our guest speakers a little thank you gift, but Jennifer has generously donated her $100 back to the society and wanted it to go to a project in need. So thank you to Jennifer. We donated it to the Russell Junior Gardeners. They have signed up with the Butterfly Ranger program. Laura, their team leader, is promoting special projects for the juniors to build pollinator gardens. This money will go towards buying native plants needed by the pollinators. Thank you, Jennifer, for your generosity and accepting to be our guest speaker tonight. Please help me give a warm welcome to Jennifer Glenn.
Hi. Okay, I'm just gonna check super quick that everybody can hear me okay. Yeah? Okay, perfect. I never know. Sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not so good. Thanks so much for having me. And that intro seems like so grandiose. I think my brother wrote that for me. So I'm like, oh, wow. I feel so pat on the back to myself there. It's great to be here. I apologize for the background. It's because I've decided to host today's like little class in my dungeon. So this is where I grow all my seedlings and all the microgreens, but I figured a group of gardeners would not mind the mess because they would understand. It's like, oh, this is the gardening zone. It's fine, you know, little dirt everywhere. It's all good. So I'm going to teach everyone tonight about how to grow microgreens. And I feel like microgreens are kind of in the middle for a lot of people. So half the people have had them before and enjoy them. And then half people have never even tried them and never even considered buying them. And so I like to promote them because in Canada, for about 5 months of the year, getting fresh greenery is actually kind of tricky if you're trying to do it in a self-sustaining kind of holistic way. So a lot of our lettuce is kind of shipped in from warmer places or greenhouses, and we don't have a lot of sun, so it's not quite as nutritious as the stuff that we're getting in the summertime. And so I supplemented and I started growing microgreens. So at first I just grew for myself and a friend or two. And then I realized it was not the most complicated process. And so I started growing. So I grow for about 12 families now, just as like a side little job here, just so I can experiment with them basically and find which ones I like the most. So currently I grow 5 different varieties of microgreens. So the most popular ones are the sunflower and the pea shoots. So they're not technically a microgreen because they're a shoot, so they grow a little bit differently. So, but they are the sweeter varieties. So when you eat a sunflower shoot, it tastes like sunflower oil. Like you can taste that kind of sweet sunflower seed taste in it, and the peas taste exactly like peas. So they're really popular with kids or in stir fries or in salads just as an add-on, and they're full of nutrients. So they're super easy to grow. It takes about 2 weeks for those 2 varieties. Then the other 2 varieties that are super popular is like a salad mix. So I do both a spicy one that has mustard and radish in it. And then there's a mild one, and that one's more like broccoli, kohlrabi, and stuff that's pretty alfalfa. So it's very calm and it's not as strong in flavor. And so both of those are really popular. People put them in salads, on sandwiches. Instead of putting lettuce, they'll put microgreens. So the nutrient value is significantly different between lettuce and a microgreen. So you're really getting a punch. It's like taking a multivitamin. So I thought the best way to kind of show you how to do it would just be to do it with you. So I've set up how I do it. So I'll show you my trays that I use. So all of the supplies that I buy are from Mum Sprouting. It's a Canadian seed company that sells lots of sprouting seeds and microgreen seeds and all the materials you need to start up. So the materials are very low. You need a double bottom tray. So you need a tray that has holes that sits in a tray that does not have holes. And you really have to have that because you really can't have water sitting in the microgreens because you're overseeding all of that. There's no like air movement near the seeds. So they're really prone to getting kind of mold and fungus right in that kind of, I call it like the jungle of microgreens. It's so thick that air can't get in. So if it stays wet, too wet, it'll rot and you'll kind of always be dealing with mold in your stuff. So I'll grab a tray. These are from Mum Sprouting. Sorry, oh, that was loud. So you'll see it's a double tray here. And I don't get the ones with the dome because I don't think that I need them in my space. If you're growing this somewhere that's really dry and getting maybe that south direct sun instead of using grow lights, you might need the dome because you really have to have fairly consistent moisture content while the seeds are sprouting. So they can't go into dry mode at all because they just will close up and not sprout at all. So I then fill the tray. So the seed mix that I use, the soil mix I use is the Pro Mix Organic Germination Mix. Now, it's like a flip-flop which way you grow microgreens. You can grow it with soil or you can grow it with a cocoa fiber. There's also a hemp one too, and that's just like a cloth. You put it along the bottom of the tray and it just gives the seed something to stick into. I prefer using soil because I garden a lot. So I then use that old soil and mix it into my compost so that my compost becomes compost even faster because it's like 50% food waste, 50% soil, basically. And so for me, it makes sense to use the soil. But if you were someone who was kind of limited on space or didn't have an area that could get dirty, like my area, then the cocoa fiber or the hemp fiber is definitely a better option. So it comes in a big roll and you just cut off pieces that fit in the bottom of the tray. And then you can, sometimes you can reuse it once or twice, but most of the time, like especially for pea, I'll show you later, they have a very insane root that goes on. So it's really hard to reuse. So most of the time you have to throw it out. Now it is cocoa or hemp, so it can be totally put in your compost. So it's not really super bad either way. So you fill your tray like this, and then your seeds come, you're gonna wanna buy your seeds in bulk for sure, because you need a lot of seeds. And so it'll get really expensive if you're buying very small packages of them. So Mum sells them by weight. And so this is like the medium large bag you get here. So I buy that for peas and then sunflowers. So these are the sunflower seeds that we use here. And so this is just a black multi-headed sunflower, really cheap sunflower seed. Then you have your sprout smaller salad mix. So these are all really tiny, 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 tiny seeds. So they're usually pretty cheap. You have to look when you're on the website because some things are extremely expensive to grow as microgreens. So for example, basil or some of the onion varieties that are like more rare, or like straight broccoli, not mixed with anything. Some of them get really expensive. because that seed is more expensive to buy. So it's not, sometimes it's not really worth the price that you have to pay for the seed. Then we have another mix. So that's the mild mix here. So I'm going to do I'm going to do the salad mix. So this one is easy because these seeds in the salad mix are all small grain-like seeds. They don't need to be soaked. So you can just have a wet medium. So whether you're using cocoa fiber or soil, make sure it's very damp. I always use the bottom of another tray to make sure that the soil's super flat. So if you don't have a flat soil, your seeds will pool and kind of fall in one spot or another instead of spreading out evenly. And so what that will do, it'll mean that you'll have a bunch in one place and they won't grow properly. They'll kind of rot out because there's too many. So you have to make sure your soil is as flat as possible if you're using soil. So I just use the old one, I push it down on top, then I'll spray it all with water again just to make sure it's nice and damp. To spread the seeds, you can measure it out. There's lots of guides online, and Mom Sprouting has a guide to show you exactly how much seeds you need by weight for a 10 by 20 tray, so that you can actually get like a specific amount of microgreens at the end. Because I do it so often for a lot of things, I just go willy-nilly because I know what it's supposed to look like. So it's like, I know how dense it's supposed to look after measuring it for a couple months, that it really, it's not a perfect science. So if you put a little too much, it's okay. Like, it'll still probably work pretty good. And so there's tools you can get out there to like help you seed it, but I use just a cheap method of 2 tiny nursery pots. And so I put them in together, and then I make sure the holes are offset so that it takes longer for the seeds to come out of the hole. And that seems to like kind of spread them well enough, you know? Okay, let's see if I tried this earlier. Yes, there we go. Okay, so then I just take the seeds. It's usually about half of one of these little nursery pots. And I just spread them all over, just like that. So these ones are the easy ones to do because you don't have to soak them. You just have to kind of fill in all the holes and make sure you have a nice mat of seeds everywhere. Then after I put all the seeds out, I'll soak it again very heavily. And so I'll show you what I use, because a mist is really like the best option. So if you can mist everything instead of using a watering can, it seems to get everything more evenly wet and it doesn't move the seeds around as much. So I use one of those like home sprayers. You can hand pump it. But if you have like a very good nozzle on your sink at home that can do a gentle spray, that will work too. It's just you don't want too much water at one time because it'll take them about 3 or 4 days before their root will hold them in place. So until that happens, if you flood the pan, all of the seeds will float and you'll have all of the microgreens kind of at one end. And that's not great either. So I'm going to show you so that was the spicy mix that I grow. So I'm going to show you what it looks like after about 8 days. I have them right over here. So this is the spicy mix after about 8 days of growth. So I could have harvested this probably about 2 days ago. It was ready, and it's good for about 3 days. After that, your radishes will have real radish leaves instead of just sprouts. So it gets a little bit heavier in the spice flavor the more leaf you get. So what I do when I want to harvest this type is I just come in with scissors and I'll cut right along the white here, just below all the leaves there. So I find that when you're harvesting the microgreens, it's best to do it when they're dry so that they don't clump together and form mold when you seal up a container of them and put it in the fridge. So it's best if you do it before you water them. You harvest a little bit, especially if you're growing them at home. You're just going to take what you need when you want it, right? So harvest it before you water, and then water heavily after you harvest a little bit. They do soak up a ton of water. So once you have a full-size microgreen like this, you have to start watering from the bottom. So you have to fill your bottom tray full of liquid to make sure that these mature root systems can actually get enough water. So I think I can probably pull it up. So you see it comes up just like a mat. So they get thirsty super, super, super fast. So it's just all, and you get the best results if they just stay nice, consistently moist, but not too wet. Okay. So I'm just going to take like a 2-second break to see if anybody has any questions before I go any further. I could answer maybe a quick question if anybody had any. We're okay? Yes, Louise?
Have you ever tried to grow arugula?
Yes.
I've just bought some little sprouts and they are fantastic, but I've never seen the seeds being sold anywhere.
So Mom's does sell arugula seeds. I personally really don't like arugula.
Okay.
So I don't grow it. There's so much pepper. I just can't handle it. But it is one of the ones that I find is more expensive. I think because it's a specialty lettuce, it's a little bit harder to get the seeds in bulk. And so it makes it a little bit more expensive, but it would be super easy to do it because it would be the small seeds like I just did. So it's just like you spread them and they sprout, and then 5-6 days later, they're ready to eat. So I would definitely try it for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so the other type of seed is the sunflower and the pea. And so because of their shell type and the type of seed they are, it's best to soak these for 24 hours before you plant them. So what I do is these ones I actually will measure out because I cannot guess willy-nilly, because when they are soaked overnight, they get twice as big. So it's like when you're spreading it, you're like, oh, this is way more than I thought it was going to be. So there is a seed guide for that at Mom's as well. So you just kind of have to measure how much of a tray you want to do. If you half a tray or a full tray, you measure it by weight, and then you soak them for 24 hours. And then after they've soaked for 24 hours, you spread them out the same way, just evenly across the tray. And again, spray them again so that they stay super wet continuously. Now, I have some peas. They went a little crazy over the weekend. So sometimes this happens with peas, is that they just like, it gets warm. I think my furnace kicked on and it warmed everything up, and they grew a lot. So they're not really supposed to be quite this long, but they taste the same either way. So it's okay. Okay, so you'll see it's like kind of a hairdo of peas right now. It's not supposed to be this long. It should only be about maybe 4 or 5 inches, 6 at the most. This is like a little out of hand. But peas and sunflowers both need a lot more water than the smaller microgreens, and I will show you why. because you'll see this is the bottom of the tray. So they've grown all the way through. They're just a full mat of roots. So if you're growing these types, just keep that in mind, that you have to bottom water them a lot earlier, and you have to give them a lot of water every day. So those guys, I do the same thing. I just come in and cut. For the peas, I leave about 2 inches from the actual pea root up the stem, just because I find that piece tends to be a little bit fibrous. Like it's kind of hard to chew, so it's not as enjoyable. And then the sunflowers, you just cut right above the root. They're super nice. I'll show you those as well. So these are the sunflowers. And so they're ready to be cut. And I'll show you. So that's what it looks like. And so you just cut it right above there with scissors. Super good. You can make pesto with it. It's amazing. I've done it because I had a bunch extra and I was like, well, we'll just blend it up and see what happens. And it was really, really good. So I find that in the winter for our family, it's a really nice option to have super easily accessible, high nutrient value food, because a lot of the fruit you're getting in the winter is not that great, or it's been sitting for a long time. So like you kind of get depleted a little bit. And these are just like boosts. So my kids are 7 and 9. And if I put a bowl of these on the table before dinner, by the time dinner starts, they're gone. Like they've eaten all of them. They've just kind of munched them away because they're super fresh. So they're very crisp, super refreshing. They have a lot of flavor. It's a really, really, really great option, especially if you like to try and grow your own food. I think that's everything. If there's anything that you think I might have forgotten. Yeah, Louise.
How do you keep it in the fridge? Once you've cut them,
Yes.
how do you keep them in the fridge?
So I keep them in a Tupperware container. As long as it's sealed, it's fine. I tend not to have holes in it because I find they dry out really fast. So they're good. The smaller leafed varieties, like the salad mixes, they're good for probably 4 to 5 days in the fridge. They tend to mold much faster and go bad much faster than the kind of more fibrous, hardy, like shoots. The shoots are good for, I've had some for almost 3 weeks and they were still good enough for a stir fry, you know, like, so I definitely think 2 weeks for sure. They have a shelf life. You just have to make sure your fridge isn't too cold. It's kind of like lettuce, you know, don't put it at the top, put it at the bottom kind of thing, because sometimes some areas are too cold and they will definitely like freeze kind of easily because they're fairly delicate.
I also saw on the internet that some people actually freeze them and then throw them in their smoothies.
Yep.
To add that extra nutrient and green.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like kale, you know, you have excess. You could easily freeze it. I blended it up first and then put it into like ice cube trays. And then it's like you can just pop an ice cube out and throw it in, because you could honestly throw it into like pasta sauce too. Like it's just a green kind of earthy flavor. So it goes well with a lot of different things for sure. Yeah. We've definitely gotten creative, like because we have extra sometimes. We'll definitely throw it in things that I never thought that it would be good. I make soup a lot and I'll throw the pea ones just kind of on top of the soup right before you eat it. And it's super good. You just mix them in and it has a very strong, like crisp pea flavor, and it just adds something very nice.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Yeah, Grace?
Sprouting is slightly different, right? I was tried some sprouting this winter and was given a package of seed. And that's even more simple and gives you really good results.
Yeah, definitely. So I do sprouting for mung beans. So it's like your typical bean sprout that you put in your stir fry or whatever. I love doing mung bean sprouts. It's like the most simple thing. Like really all you need is a mason jar, and you can just soak the seeds for a couple of hours, then empty them and just wash them every day to keep them kind of wet and sealed, and you'll get nice bean sprouts. One thing that I found I didn't like about the mason jar or similar techniques was that you got curly sprouts because they would all grow into each other. And so I found it kind of hard to use them because you had to like rip them apart to get them out of the jar. And so one thing that I bought, and I'll show you just one sec. So at Mom's, they had the same kind of microgreen trays, but they're 10 by 10 instead of 10 by 20. And so what I did was I took a bottom tray and filled it full of water and soaked the mung beans in that. And then I would use the one with holes to help me drain out the water. And then I would just leave it like that in the dark. And so because they were compressed in between two pieces of plastic, so the beans are kind of in the middle here, it made the beans come out straight. And so they're just like the ones from the grocery store. So it was a much easier way to use them. And I found it a lot easier to not get that kind of moldy, because like if you leave them too long without washing them, they get kind of moldy very, very, very quickly. So it's like they turn bad very quick. And so I found it was much easier to prevent that in this tray. So it actually turned out, it was a little experiment that turned out to be like pretty good.
Excellent. I did it in the mason jar, and it was a mix with some very small seeds. And it's only a matter of days. And then I was able to get a lid through Lee Valley that has tiny holes so you can drain the water well. Mm-hmm. But within 2 or 3 days, you had fresh sprouts and really nice.
Yeah, they're super. That's usually like an alfalfa mix.
It was like a lettuce. It had radish. It was a peppery mix. So nice. This bag that I had. So it was well worth it.
Yeah, I love the flavor. It just adds so much to your anything that you're making.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to ask about that too, because I used to do that way back in the day. You know, I think in my 20s, I was doing the sprouting thing with the jar. So it's kind of a throwback. But do you know, just nutritionally, if there's a difference, whether they're prepared that way or grown in soil?
So it has to do with how old the sprout is. So like all of them kind of have a peak. And then once they get to that peak, they start to depreciate in nutrients pretty quickly. So each seed has a different time for when it's peaked. So things like alfalfa or those small sprouts, you're eating it at almost the exact same stage. So when you sprout it in a jar, it's about 3 days. When you eat it as a microgreen, it's about 5 days. So their nutrient value is pretty similar. But for things like beans or peas, their nutrient value would be slightly higher right after they started to make like a green leaf. So a little bit before you would cut a microgreen. So for beans and stuff like that, their sprout is probably a little bit better for you. Just marginally though. Yeah. They have, there's a bunch of charts that you can find online that track the nutrients as they absorb water and germinate. Each type of seed has kind of a different path that it takes as to why, and it just depends on how the seed structure is normally. So how much nutrients is packed into its cotyledons or whatever energy source that it has in there. I like sprouts though because they're easy for people who don't have a lot of space. Like you don't need light at all to make them nutritious. So you can just shake a jar on your counter and that's good enough. Yeah.
So I'm an accountant, so I'm going to ask you about cost. So can you just give like an estimate what you think a tray of, say, sunflowers or the salad mix would cost?
Yeah, for sure. So I buy the soil mix that I use. I buy it in a bale. So I assume a lot of you know what that means, but some of you might not. It's like compressed soil. So it's about 4 bags of 25-liter soil just kind of like pushed into each other and super compressed. And so this bale has lasted me all winter. So like it's a lot more than the average microgreen, and it's only $34. So it's a very low cost medium. The hemp is a little bit more expensive until you can buy it at a commercial scale. Once you can buy it at a commercial scale, I think cost wise, they end up about the same. The beans and seeds, like I said, totally vary in cost depending on what type of seed is in there. But the sunflower, the pea, and the mild salad mix are all kind of roughly the same cost. A little fluctuation, but a little pretty much the same cost. And so a full tray would only cost you maybe $1.20 roughly in seed cost because you're buying it in bulk volume, right? So it costs for each one, it's a different price, but say it's like $30 for the whole bag, but you can do 20 trays. So it's definitely, it's a low cost until you get to the varieties like basil and some of the more like purple ones that are very specific. They tend to be more for fashion cuisine, I would call it, because they taste the same and they have roughly the same nutritional value, but they're purple. So like they look nice in a picture. So they tend to be what like restaurants would pick and stuff like that. So those ones are definitely, I don't consider it worth it. Like a basil microgreen for me kind of seems a little bit over the top. Like I'd just put some basil on there, just slice it up a leaf. But if you want to try it, it might be a fun alternative. Like say, hey, why not? You know, in the winter time when you're really craving the fresh basil. And I will say all of the equipment that comes from Mums is really well made. So the trays that they sell are very heavy duty black plastic. So they're a little bit more expensive. I think it's $10 or $5. Oh, I don't remember. But it's all on the sheet that I gave you, but it's definitely worth the price because reusing them for like 10 years is not out of the question. Like they do not break, they do not crack. So it's a very sustainable option for doing stuff like this. Because like I see sometimes I go and I have to buy some materials at like Rona or wherever, Home Hardware, and their seeding trays and stuff, they're very thin plastic. So they only last you maybe a year or two, especially if you put them in the sun, they're toast for sure. These ones are super heavy duty. So I would definitely say, even just as a gardener, it's worth investing in slightly more heavy duty plastic ware because it's so easy to reuse it. It just like comes right in, no problem. Give it a good wash and it's ready to go again.
I have a nephew who grows microgreens and supplies restaurants in the Ottawa Valley. And he just 2 weeks ago, he sold me a tray of basil for $35. I don't know, just to keep his business going because he's having a hard time.
Yeah,
But
I bet.
yeah, I don't know. I
Good.
didn't ask him what he charges the restaurants for that tray.
I think that you got a good deal.
I
That's
think so.
definitely a good deal for sure. Did you like how it tasted?
I love it. Yeah,
Good, eh? I know.
but I love the radish.
The radish is, if you like radishes, eating radish microgreens is like eating a radish.
Yeah,
I do not like radishes, so I don't eat that one. But I make it for, everyone loves that one for sandwiches and stuff.
yeah. He challenged, like Manya, I was telling him about your tulips and things, and he said what he can't grow and what the chefs are asking for is edible flowers. So he said you should be growing edible flowers. You'd make us a mint.
Well, we are starting a cut flower farm this summer as well. So to try it. So maybe I'll put a few varieties in.
Yeah, neat.
That's an awesome, oh my God, that would be so fun. I love cut flower gardens.
Yeah, we have 1,000 snapdragons started so far. So
I think those are edible.
yeah. I do have another question for you, Jennifer. Like, what's your weekly process or routine, or like how many trays did you have on the go to keep yourself supplied, and how much time did you invest every day in keeping your family in microgreens?
If it was just for my family alone, it would probably take me about 10 minutes a day, just checking on them and watering them. And I would probably really only need 2 trays, because I would do half a tray of sunflower and half a tray of another variety, because we don't just like scarf them all the time. Some of my customers eat a lot of microgreens, so they could probably do up to 6 trays for their family. I do try to rotate them. So my weekly schedule would be that I would start the peas and the sunflowers soaking. So they soak for a day. Then I would put them and they would grow on the trays for about 4 or 5 days. So they would be sprouting and starting to grow by that point. Then I would start the salad mixes so that kind of everything is ready at the same time, because the salad mix only takes a week. So I do try and make sure that everything's kind of ready at the same time so that I can start the next cycle at the same time, so that we are kind of staying in the same routine. If you're just doing it for yourself though, really you could experiment a little bit more. So I do sometimes like quarter trays of different varieties. So as long as they're all kind of the same height, you can put them together. So salad mixes can go with other salad mixes, or basil can go with like alfalfa, because they're all kind of cut at the same height. As you saw with the peas, they don't really share well. So they tend to kind of crowd out other varieties with their ridiculous root systems. So they don't really share space well. So I find pretty much everything does bad when you put it with pea, but sunflower can be mixed with other things as well, because it's kind of the same height. But I do try and make sure that I'm rotating them on the same schedule. So I have like a 2-week schedule that we run, and it does work. I also grow a lot of seedlings. Even in the winter, I start doing flowers and stuff like that. So for me, I've made it kind of part of my daily routine. The first thing I do is I go down, I turn the lights on, I water everything and check. And then at the end of the day, I do the same thing. So I go down, turn all the lights on. You could automate it pretty easily, but I find if you automate it, you forget about it. You're like, yeah, it's fine, no worries. And then like, I tried that and then I killed a bunch of plants. So I didn't do that again. Do you want me to chat about the community garden now? Because I don't think there's any more questions. I don't
I do
see.
have one question if you don't mind. Do
Sure.
you need to have a light? Like if you had a sunny window, would that be okay?
Yeah, for sure. So like the lights that I use for my microgreens are just shop lights. They're not even grow lights.
Ah.
So it's just a simple LED bulb. So all it really needs is a light source close by. Obviously, the further it is from strong light, the stretchier they're gonna kind of come out. So they'll come out a little taller than normal. But yeah, you can totally do it in a window. Lots of people just do it in tiny little trays right on their like kitchen window. And that's enough to feed like yourself.
I would like to ask a question.
Sure.
Okay, I grow pole beans, and I always have too many for seeding for next year. Can I take those beans and soak them and make them into bean sprouts?
I don't see why not. I think that the reason that like the beans that I use, they're called mung beans.
I know them.
I think the reason they use mung beans for bean sprouts on the normal is because their cotyledons are very small. So the part that's in the bean that feeds the sprout is very chalky if you eat it too early or if it's too large. So I would say it's totally worth trying because I know for sure it's not going to hurt you. I just don't know how good they would taste because some of them aren't as sweet. Some are more chalky before they're an actual plant.
Okay, so do they need soil, or can you just grow them in water?
You can just grow, if you're just going to go a sprout, you can just do it
Mhm.
right in water. You soak them.
Wow.
I would look up how long to soak for that specific variety. And then
Okay.
you drain the water and just give them a wash every day.
Which means you just
I just
spray them with a.
fill them back up with nice clean water. And then I would
Okay.
tip it over and drain all that water out again. So it just keeps the
Okay.
beans moist enough that they can germinate. And then that's how they become the sprout.
Okay, you showed a tray, and you put another tray on top. You put the tray and then the beans in it, and then the other tray on top.
Exactly, exactly. So you could probably realistically do it with a plate as well. You could have one
Okay.
plate, as long as the plates weren't too heavy. You could
Mhm.
easily have them in between a plate as well, because they don't need any light at all for sprouts. So you
Oh.
could try it with a plate. If you have a dinner plate and another dinner plate that's not too heavy, you could definitely do it that way too. Just as long as once a day you give them a good wash, because they
Okay.
really do get fungus very quick.
Okay. I'd like to try it.
Do it. I want to see a picture though.
Well, thank you.
One thing is that you have to make sure your seed is not treated.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You don't want anything that's
Okay.
coming from like a registered farm grower or anything like that that has a coating on the outside of it. That's not.
Well, it was grown last year and in my garden and over winter, and I don't think that's a problem.
Nope. I think you're pretty good. If you grow it yourself, I think it's pretty safe. Okay. All right. So I'm going to chat to you guys about the community garden project super quick for you. So I rent land for my business. So I own a gardening company, and gardening is a dying sport. So not many homeowners want to take on the challenge anymore. I always tell them, you could just not go to the gym and weed your garden and you'd probably end up bonus. But hey, I'll do it for you. So we had to rent space off of Fiat Farm because we were expanding. So at Fiat Farm this year, we are going to be starting a community garden project where it will be 30 meters by 30 meters once it gets completed. And we'll grow all the food that we grow there will go to the food bank. So none of it is for commercial use. It's all going to be donated towards the Embrun Food Bank, the Castleman Food Bank, and then I'm also going to set up a way for needy families to contact me directly in case they don't want to go to the food bank, because I know some people are uncomfortable with that or have stigmas against that. So I'm trying to make it so that our community supports our community. And so we, unfortunately, because of COVID, everything's kind of on pause for now, because hopefully most of this garden will be volunteer made and run so that it has a fairly low cost that goes along with it. So we have set up a bunch of volunteer opportunities. So we have families from the community that have reached out that want to be involved with their children. We have a homeschooling group also that want to be involved once a week with those families and their children. We have the Canadian Armed Forces have brought together a group of volunteers. So there's 25 adults that are planning on coming for a full day of volunteer work in the garden. So that was huge because I'm like, oh, we can make the whole garden. Unfortunately, with COVID, we won't be able to do large gatherings like that. So I think that the actual making and structure of the garden will have to be done mostly by myself and a couple of volunteer tractors, I think, which is not quite the visual you want, but you know, you have to do what you have to do, because I have a bunch of tomatoes and peppers plants that I ordered. So at least that section of the garden has got to go in this year so that the tomatoes and the peppers can grow. So I designed the garden into a quadrant like garden. So I've cut it into 4 sections because 30 by 30 is a little bit daunting, like 100 feet of garden. If to give that to a volunteer and be like, okay, I need you to weed this whole 100 feet of garden, have a nice afternoon. It's not as uplifting as like, hey, I have this 40 feet of garden and then this other 40 feet of garden over here. So we're trying to make it so that it's comfortable space to be in for people who don't really know a lot about gardening, so that it's not overwhelming. It's not too agricultural. It's more of a teaching space and a growing space than trying to make it as efficient as possible. We're going to have a kids area in the garden that's going to be full of sunflowers and a bean teepee. And then we're going to get some of those big metal tubs, those big metal farm tubs, and just fill it with dirt and just let the kids kind of have their own heyday over there, so that it's maybe a little easier for families to volunteer because there's a place to let the toddlers just ruin everything while we do other stuff. But planning wise, I'm trying to grow food that's expensive so that it can ultimately provide a good source of local organic produce to families in need, but also is providing the most expensive food so that the food bank can save as much money as they possibly can. So I'm not growing varieties of like potatoes really, or things that take up a mass amount of space with a kind of lower cost yield. We're going to do a lot of peppers, tomatoes, cucumbers. We got a big request for lettuce. So we're going to take on the challenge of growing and transporting lettuce. We'll see how that goes. And then carrots of all varieties. And then I also opted to include an area for indigenous growth. So I've contacted a few of indigenous leaders in Ottawa that have kind of pointed me to a few books that, so we're going to do a little section on their kind of growing techniques and experiment a little bit with that to see if it's a little bit more successful. Because Ottawa, as I'm sure all of you know, is a little bit challenging sometimes in how short its season can be and how quickly the temperatures can fluctuate from very cold to extremely hot. So it'll be interesting to see if some of the indigenous techniques work a little bit better for that type of soil type and that type of environment. But we're really excited, and I hope that it happens. But with COVID, we're just kind of taking it one day at a time, and we'll do what we can, and we'll see. Maybe in July, we'll be able to open it up for volunteers to come and help us, because we will definitely need help maintaining these gardens. I'm definitely designing them to be as easy as possible. So a lot of straw and a lot of ground cover going in for sure. But even with that, there's always a lot of maintenance on that big patch of dirt. So any help would be welcomed with open arms anytime. So I'm hoping once we're allowed to have volunteers, I'll kind of do a sign up sheet and people can just pick times that work for them. Once they're introduced to the garden by me one time, they can just come and weed at their heart's content, you know, like, because I don't know if anybody has been to Fiat Farm, but it's a very beautiful and calm space to be. So it's not a big hardship to go and spend an hour at a nice quiet farm weeding by yourself. Does anyone have any questions?
Jennifer, where is Fiat Farm? Where's it located?
It's on Route 400. It's close to the utilities building, the Russell Township Utilities building, where the old dump used to be. So it's right at the bridge there at Route 400. It's 757 Route 400.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No other questions? Awesome. I guess I talked enough.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was great. That was very interesting. I think there'll be a lot of us that are gonna give the microgreens a try. Sounds great. And your project sounds ambitious, but fabulous. Yeah.
That's a kind way to say it, ambitious.
No. Yeah. It is though, but it's good.
Home, right?
Yeah. Good. So we still have a little bit of time.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead,
Grace, what
Carol.
kind of container did you use?
For the winter seeding,
Yeah.
the jugs that, for example, windshield fluid comes in, or vinegar,
Oh, my
3
dear thought.
liters or so.
Okay.
Yes, that's what I used. And then set them out. Well, you heard the whole process, and then just set them outside. Yes.
Would it be too late now to start any, Grace?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't know if anyone has tried their tender vegetables yet. I still need to start my cucumbers or zucchinis or squash. I was thinking I'll wait till the -3 nights this week, but maybe by Saturday, I'd like to try them and put that in the jug and outside and see. But today I had peppers, sweet peppers coming up. And it's, you know,
That's
they
good.
don't like it too cold.
Thank you.
I was going to suggest if anyone did not get the handout that Jennifer so kindly put on or gave, it is on the newsletter. I could say take out a membership and you'll get the newsletter and you'll have it. Or contact info, which one, Jacqueline, which
Yeah,
address?
info at russellgardeners.ca, but also all of the newsletters are on our website.
That's
So
true.
if you ever, can't find them in your inbox, you can always go there and see all the old ones.
Excellent.
Yeah. Anything else that anybody wanted to ask or volunteer a good gardening tip for this spring? Mary Claire? Your hand.
It has nothing to do with gardening, but actually this week is Volunteers Week. So I just wanted to thank every volunteer that puts their time into bettering their community and, helping out in all the projects that are looking, very exciting for the future of the Russell with the food banks and everything like that. So thank you to all the volunteers. And that's just my little tip for the night. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Louise?
Question, Grace. The contest or project for taking a picture of our bulbs, what is the cutoff line date?
The date that we would put the next newsletter out. Newsletters and our meetings are the third Monday. So it would be the newsletter comes out the 17th. So it would be the Friday before that the pictures should be in to Jacqueline.
Yeah, good question, Louise. I'm looking at my calendar here. It's the 14th, Friday the 14th. Yeah, I should have added that, but yes, send it in sooner.
Is there a direct link, Jacqueline, so people can see what pictures have been submitted?
I can do one. I have them all on our on a website. It's called a Flickr. It's a place where you can put photos, but I can include that link. But in the email is a link so that you can just click on it and email. So the email can go straight for the contest. But
right, if there was a direct link, people could view it and see each
Yeah.
other's pictures.
Yeah, sure.
It's not too much.
Yeah, I can do that.
Excellent.
I'll put it on my to-do list.
You're awesome. Thanks,
It's getting
Jack.
longer and longer. Good. Another thing that I could have put in the newsletter, but I had sent it and then remembered. But there's a lot of societies that are doing Zoom meetings and on very interesting topics. So you can always go to the OHA website. So it's gardenontario.org. And they have an event calendar there, and the societies will, most of them put their events there, so you can look and then contact to get links and that sort of thing. There's just too many for us to include all the time in the newsletters, so we thought that that's a good place you can go. I think that was it that I had. Anyone else have anything to add? No.
Are we going to send out, some type of, you were saying about, maybe the next month's meeting, if you wanted to have a survey of some kind to talk to the members and see if they wanted to go ahead and have another meeting?
Sure. Yeah, I can, I'll send out a little survey. So not too complicated, but you can, if you wouldn't mind filling it out, that'd be great. And let us know what maybe some topics that you'd like to hear about, or if you have somebody that you know who would be a great guest speaker that we can connect with and get on here. Because it's certainly not as good as us getting together in person, but
Mm.
we have to do what we can now. And this is
Mhm.
much better than not seeing each other, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Agreed.
It was
good,
excellent.
good. Jennifer, thank you again. It was great having you. You're a great speaker.
It was really great to speak
Thank
to all of
you.
you. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out via email. I don't mind at all.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks for having me.
All right, well, we'll sign off now and we'll see you all again very soon. All right,
Bye, everyone.
bye.
Bye.